Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel. For today's video, we are going to turn this little hot mess over here into this winter wonderland beauty. I've got a brand new stencil on here. I'm using a couple shades of Terra Clay Paint. It is a simple way to get a unique look. This is a true artisan's paint and I'm going to show you just how to do it. Stay tuned. So today's video is actually literal trash to treasure. This was listed for free on Facebook Marketplace, and I'm going to show you what I got. The reason this desk was free, I'm sure, is because of the water damage. The top of the piece is going to need to be removed in order to salvage what I can do with the base. My plan is to turn these into two really cute end tables. So first things first, I got in here and took off the top piece of the desk. After removing the tops, then the backs, because they were pretty disgusting too, I pulled off any piece of loose veneer. I re-glued and screwed the joints to make sure that they would be sturdy, and then cleaned the entire piece inside and out with Terra Clean. Turns out I had enough wood in my shed to apply new backs to the pieces because they really needed a fresh up on the back, and this will also help take care of any odor that sits inside the wood on the piece. All right, so here's the deal. I did go to Lowe's to buy new wood for the sides, and then when I saw the prices of the new plank wood that I would have cut at Lowe's, I turned around and came home. So I ended up using scrap wood that I had in my shed, and it turned out a-okay. I had these planks in my shed from a previous project that I did on my fireplace. I had painted them white and used them as kind of like a fake shiplap on top of existing brick. So I'd saved this wood for a really long time, and I'm glad I did because I used it today to fix up the sides of these tables. I just did a basic box in to cover any of the trim damages and used a nail gun to secure. This plank style side will also cover the existing damages that were there when I took out the middle drawer that was holding the two pedestals together. Then I just filled those little holes in with some Dixie Belle mud and covered any other damages. So if you've been watching the video as I've gone along, I've done quite a bit of repair work to these pieces. This is part of a desk. These are the two pillars that came down either side of the desk. It used to have a top and a drawer in the middle. I have dismantled that, added scrap wood to build some new sides to the piece. This is just scrap wood that I had out in my little shed, as well as a new back to the piece as well. This is going to help with the cleanliness and any odor that might have been involved in that old wood. You know, old wood is porous and it holds smell. So I've removed that. The top is gone. The water damage has been corrected by peeling off that veneer. That's what you can see right here is the naked wood. And we are going to use Terra on this. I have cleaned this with White Lightning and I have repaired some areas with Dixie Belle's mud. So today's plan is Terra, all neutrals, even the handles. It works, trust me. I've had great success with Terra sticking to metal. So let's jump in and play with some paint. The colors I used from the Terra Clay Paint line are Moonbeam, Prairie Dawn, and Onyx. So it's only 3 colors, but I ended up blending the Moonbeam with a little bit of the Onyx to create the gray that you'll see. So as I go along, I will share with you which color I used. So I started with the Prairie Dawn, which is kind of like a creamier white. It's not as white as the Moonbeam. I started with that and a chip brush because I wanted to stipple on the color. Stippling on the color versus brushing it on is going to create texture where there wasn't any before. And I want to take these nightstands to kind of like an aged old door effect. Since Terra Clay Paint has a really great texture to begin with, using this method of applying the paint is just going to really build up the texture around the edges. So I'm going to go a little bit thick with the paint and I'm going to stipple it on around the edges and let it dry that way so it stays with its little peaks and valleys. So when I start to add more colors over top or paint drag, the darker colors are going to sit within the edges. Terra Clay Paint is the newest paint line that's available from Dixie Belle Paint. It is available in 18 vibrant colors, but it also does have some neutrals like these, and they're really great for blending and mixing together to create your own color palette. It also has very low VOCs, and it is completely non-toxic. I use the same chip brush to apply the Prairie Dawn and then now apply the Moonbeam because I don't really care if my colors mix together. Like I said, I'm going to be layering and layering and building upon the layers on this piece. So rather than speed up a lot of this video, I'm just going to speed up the parts where I'm just covering the wood. This is going to let you see how I've stippled it on over top of the entire surface, building texture to create that old door effect. Be aware that when you apply your Terra Clay paint in this way, you're going to have a thicker consistency to your paint, so it's going to take a little bit longer to dry. If you need to work fast or need to dry a certain layer, you can get out your heat gun and blast that area and then continue to build your layers. Since I'm painting with the drawers in to create that layered effect, I'm going to tape off the sides of my drawers so that I can kind of just paint around them. Again, with that paint mashing and paint smashing, you can get a little bit of paint everywhere, hence the paints that you see on my wall and my floor behind me. But taping off those edges is just going to save me some time to have to wash it off later. Here's the deal though with Terra Clay paint. If you do get it somewhere where you don't want it, it's totally reactivated by using water. If you sprayed your misting bottle with water onto an area where you didn't want that paint, you're able to very easily gently scrub that paint off. So once again, you're going to see me start to move in with the Moonbeam and the Prairie Dawn, interchanging them to create a kind of textured effect on the front of the drawers. And right, like I said before, go ahead and paint over top of your metal surfaces. I've had really great success with painting metal and Terra. I have sealed it though before using the Dixie Belle's new Terra Wax, which currently is unavailable in stores. So if you were to be sealing your Terra with the clear coat, either in matte or Terra Tuff, I would suggest that you coat your metal with Slick Stick first. So the only way that I have done it successfully is using the Terra Wax, and like I said, currently unavailable in stores or online. Using Terra Clay Paint is kind of like a little bit of a cheat because this is not a perfect piece, right? We've got nail holes, we've got added sides, we have some water damages that are covered. using Terra in the stippling manner is just going to disguise any of the marks that I don't want people to see. So it's almost like working smarter, not harder, in order to cover the damages and hide some of those flaws. The color that you see me using now is the mix of onyx and a little bit of the moonbeam, which is the white. I created a really pretty gray color in order to pull all of the colors together. The onyx on its own would have been too dark for the look that I was going for. So now we're gonna get a little messy, and this is my favorite part about painting, is kind of creating a look that wasn't there before. You heard me say that I wanted to make it look a little bit like an old door. So I'm gonna be spraying my paint to create runs and drips or build up that texture on the sides, even thin it down enough that I can pull it back and show some of the original wood that is underneath on the drawers. Don't be afraid to use a chip brush or even a spatula to kind of drag your paint and make that texture happen. This paint has that texture built in, remember? So using your fingers to pat it or paper towel to create texture, it's entirely up to you. This is really an artisan paint that you're able to manipulate into whatever look you desire. You're going to see me use my heat gun quite a bit at this point in the process because I need to dry that area to keep the color where I put it down. Remember, I'm using a lot of water to manipulate the paint and push it around. And if that was completely wet, it's going to get very muddy and muddled. So I want to keep that paint color, that darkness around the handles to that specific spot. So when you see me use my heat gun, that's all I'm doing is speeding up the process. So now that I've created the base that I like, I'm going to use a plastic spatula and start to drag that paint up and across the piece. What this is going to do is create a layer with a little bit more depth and age the piece in a tiny way. I wanted to warm up the piece a little bit, so I grabbed my chocolate from the chalk mineral paint line as well as Gravel Road and started kind of stippling on a little bit of the chocolate to the edges, almost to create like a rusted edge effect. You can mix your Terra as well as your chalk mineral paint. It really doesn't matter. I was just using a tiny bit of the color, spraying it and dragging and moving it around. This stencil is a brand new Mylar stencil from the Bells and Whistles line. This is called Birchwood, and I'm going to use it now in kind of a reverse color effect. I'm going to, instead of paint the trees in, kind of make a background to look like the trees are standing out. So for this, I used a chip brush that I cut down to a very kind of stiff brush and the Gravel Road chalk mineral paint. So I didn't fill in the entire stencil. You'll see me as I go along kind of looking to the piece that I've already finished. Because this is a set, I need to make them fairly similar. I wanted kind of a ghost stencil, which means that I really didn't fill it in perfectly and exactly. I just kind of went around the edges and played with it. And even after I took it off, I sprayed it a little bit with water and took some of the paint off. This is going to give a really pretty distressed look to the sides, and I actually really like how it turned out. I repeated the same process on the other side of the end table, and this is going to just make sure that everything is matching. But once again, these are textured pieces. They have distressing, they have drippy paint. Nobody's going to notice if it's not completely exactly the same. At this point in the piece, I decided I wanted to darken my edges a little bit more. So I used that same brush with the Gravel Road on it that I had on the sides and just really kind of distress the edges. What I'm able to do by doing this is darken the edges without sanding. Because remember, I added new sides to these pieces, and if I sanded back, the wood color is going to be different than what is on the wood color on the front of the drawers. So this is kind of like a little sneaky trick to make your edges look aged without sanding back. Just do it with a darker paint around all the edges, and it's a great way to get a distressed look. Okay, so now that the bases are done, I'm gonna let them sit for a really long time, probably 24 hours, in order to get dry enough to apply my Terra Wax. Let's take a minute and work on the tops. I did actually buy lumber when I went to Lowe's for the top of the pieces. I measured the top of the existing two boxes and then acquired like at least a 1/4 inch to a 1/2 inch overhang on either side and bought plank wood. This is just the really cheap plank wood from Lowe's. If you make sure that it's straight and not bowed, it's going to do the job just fine. So I cut them to size and then distressed them with hammers and banged on the edges just to beat them up a little bit more, and then did one even coat of espresso gel stain. This gel stain is great, it just wipes on. So for sealing your Terra paint, you have a couple of different options. You have Terra Seal in matte and Terra Tuff. Terra Seal in matte is more of a matte finish, and Terra Tuff has more of a satin finish and is a little bit more water resistant. Dixie Belle will be releasing Terra Wax shortly to your local retailer. Please check with them to see when they'll have it in store or online. I like to use the Terra Wax to seal my Terra Clay Paint. To do this, I use my La Petite and then apply the wax in small circles and then burnish it back in approximately 2 hours. So as usual, I'm rushing my process. I probably should have waited longer for my gel stain to dry, but I am an impatient painter. So here I am putting my still wet, of course, all over my hands as well, still wet planks down onto my piece. Remember I told you I sanded the edges? I smoothed and rounded the edges on the pieces that would face the front. So once you get them on the top and line them up and make sure that they're even Steven across the sides and the back, like I said, I did account for a tiny bit of an overhang. I like that look. I don't want it to be flush to the top. I think that end tables look weird when the top piece is completely flush. So I have a slight overhang with my wood. I am going to simply drill holes and then drill them down onto the top of my tables. Sometimes when I add new tops to my tables like this, I actually build up the interior to create a new support bracket for when I drill down onto these planks. But for these pieces, I did not have enough room on the interior. So I have a very small area where I need to drill into. I made sure to mark it off with chalk so that I wouldn't miss my line, basically. It's just giving me a straight line to drill my screws down into the existing wood on the top of the pedestals. I like to use drywall screws for this part of the process because of the color. I like the darker color of the screws. I don't want to use silver and then have to stain them or paint them. So I find these work really well, and I'm going to screenshot the box for you on here as well so that you can see exactly which type of screws I'm using. So I drilled the little holes and then screwed them in, and it's not a hard process. It's quite easy. Just make sure you get it into the wood below so that your wood planks sitting on top are secure. And don't come at me or judge me for my terrible drill use. I'm still not a pro at the drill. I'm not going to lie. Power tools sometimes are a pain in the butt for me. Here you go. These are the screws that I use to drill down with. You can buy them in varying lengths, so it works for your project. Next up, I actually come back in with a little bit of the gel stain to hide any of the light wood that might show up when I drill those little screws in, because sometimes it splinters a bit. So all this is going to do is hide any of those little flaws and actually darken the color of the screws just that tiny bit more, which makes them blend in. I really like the rustic look that you get from drilling the planks down from the top versus from the interior. Plus, this is just a simpler way for me to attach them. I'm not going to lie, power tools still challenge me a bit. I wanted to add just a bit more dark to the handles and around the edges. I did this with my Dixie Belle's Best Dang Wax in black. You could also use brown and then sprayed it. Because it's a water-based wax, you can really manipulate it and get it to go exactly where you want. I then touched some of the edges with gold and I was all done. And this now is my least favorite part about painting furniture, the cleanup. If I had a good singing voice, which I do not, I would be singing you the cleanup song right now. But I clean my entire area and get it ready for staging, which includes cleaning the walls. Yes, I paint in my house, and yes, I repaint those walls about 4 or 5 times a year. Last but not least, I need to seal my gel stains, so I did that with my Dixie Belle's Gator Hide and my blue sponge. I only did 1 coat of sealant over top of these plank woods because that stain actually soaks in really well to the raw wood. It's very simple to just coat it with some Gator Hide and protect my work. You could add as many coats of protected Gator Hide as you like. If by chance you don't have gator hide and you're looking to seal your gel stain, you could also use a satin clear coat. I don't like to use gloss, it's too shiny, and I don't like to use matte because it's too dull. So I think satin or gator hide is the most perfect sealing for any gel stains. And that, my friends, is that. I finished these 2 end tables in a couple of days, and I am actually really pumped at how great they look. I wasn't sure about that stencil when I first started applying it, but at the end of the day, I love it. I love this look. So thank you to Dixie Belle and Terra Clay Paint because it allowed me to create some beautiful trash to treasure end tables.